Thank you. Thank you for everything today. What you were saying all morning, I think I forgot. But I've been getting ready for a really long time and following you with that. And like lots of almost everything is coming together at once. A lot of this path.
Let's tie that phrase in, getting ready to be ready to be ready. So if you're just looking for a satisfying feeling now, then you're ready for the next and the next and the next and the next. That's how you get ready to be ready. You just stay ready. You're just ready. You're on deck so that you're in the receptive mode, which means you've got your radio on and your tuner set and you're just waiting for the information to flow because the revelation is coming from your source to you all the time. The question is, are you ready to receive it? Are you ready to translate it? Are you ready to take on the huge frequency that this electrical current is? And are you ready to utilize it in a way that is meaningful in your life experience? Because it's big. It's bigger than most can contain.
That's what's going on. And that's what I'm feeling. And so thank you for that, because when I do feel that in moment to moment and be in this present now, yes, it's like this is happening. It's huge.
Well, usually the reason, if it feels big like that, usually this is what's happening. You're believing that you're under the influence of Source. And you are sort of kind of often. But when you're not, you're trying to make it happen. You're trying to push the noodle. And it's what we've been calling trying too hard. So it's trying to sort of think it into place or will it into place. It's what goal setters do and fake it till you make iters do and trying to make it so because I say it's so.
That's a world I've lived in for a long time, and I guess it's hard to break away from that. So
it's not hard to break away when you just ask yourself the simple statement, is this a satisfying thought or a satisfying impulse? Because it never is when you're trying to force something. It always feels tense.
Yeah, exactly right. So in the changes of everything, then some chaos will show up. And then the chaos, then I'm under the influence of something else.
Well, what's the chaos? Now think about what the chaos is. The chaos that shows up is just a representation, a thoughts turning to things, perfect manifestation of the maybe subtle vibrational dysfunction that you had going on that you didn't recognize. If you've got a vibration of desire and a vibration of doubt going on, and you keep playing with both of them, so that the momentum of both of them keeps being a factor, then when these thoughts turn to things, they are chaotic in nature. You see what so all it means is you didn't flick the spark off soon enough. That's all it means.
So there's clutter with that.
Because when you're not doing the unsatisfying part of this equation, so you're only really encouraging the satisfying parts, now you're practicing the vibration of alignment, and as that momentum becomes bigger and bigger, things just keep working out and you get in a feeling of flow. And we're not ever trying to guide you away from chaos or from negative emotion or away from contrast, because all of those things are necessary for the expansion and the motion forward. We just think that you have practiced enduring far more than you ever needed to. You're having a rougher ride in life than you need to have. And the thing that we most want to emphasize, so much so that you really maybe get it, it's all self-inflicted. It's all self-induced. Even though it feels like somebody else did it to you, they never did. You know how maybe you're debating with someone and you have two opposing positions on something, and you're sure you're right and the other one's sure that they're right, and you're talking to each other and each is hopeful that they will convince the other. Have you ever done that?
A friend of mine has, yeah.
Right. Exactly. The more you try to convince them, the more they dig in to their existing position. And the more you try to convince them, they dig in. The more you try to convince them, the more you dig in. So you just get more dug in and more dug in and more dug in. Well, what we would like to help you to see is that it's just you and you all the time doing that. It's like your desires sometimes contradict your beliefs, and your beliefs sometimes contradict your desires. So you've got this little battle going on. Esther had an experience. We keep telling the story because it was so good. We'll give you an abbreviated version of it in case you've heard it. We've been telling it for a few weeks. She was in Del Mar. She has a house and a guest house there. And she'd been gone for a while. She sat at her desk and looked out to where the ocean should be and couldn't see it because the plants on the fence line had grown over and they were blocking her view. So our gardeners were there that day, and she asked them if they would just trim those trees and bushes back so she could see the ocean. They said they would do that. And then they said, but there's a tree down in the ravine that might be part of the problem. And Esther said, well, do whatever you need to do, but I only own half of the ravine, so just make sure it's on my property before you do anything to it. So then off she went to lunch with a friend. And when she came back, she was gone for several hours. And when she came back, she stood on her deck and looked, and she could see the ocean again. She was so happy. It's back. And then she looked out a little ways, and she saw something that was so upsetting to her. She saw 2 very large tree stumps up close to the neighbor's property. And she thought, how could they have misunderstood me? She could see the ocean, but she thought, I don't know how this happened. I'm going to jail. So she worried about it for a day or two and stewed about it, and then she tried to make herself feel better. That house is being renovated, and maybe it's new owners, and maybe they don't know those trees were there. And then a couple of days later, she saw a man standing out there in a suit looking at the stumps. And she thought, oh, I better go confess. He took his camera out. He was taking a picture of them. So she had never been to the house. It took her a while to find it. It's on a hill. She didn't know if it was a road down that went up or a road up that went down. So by the time she got over there, he was no longer there. And all the way she practiced her speech. I did this and I didn't mean to. And I'll do whatever you want me to do to make it right. I'll plant new trees. I'll plant your whole yard. I am so sorry. But he wasn't there, so she didn't deliver her speech. She went home. And then the next day she went out to lunch with the same friend again. And when they got back, she said, come and see what I did. And she took him to the lower house out to look. And she pointed at the trees. My gardeners cut those down. I asked them to clear my view, and look what they did. And he looked and he said, Esther, your gardeners didn't just cut those trees down yesterday. Where's all the debris? Why is the hillside not torn up? And Esther thought, oh. And then they walked out to the edge, and there was a little tree up close to Esther's property, about that big around, and all the debris from it was still lying right there by it, right where the gardeners had cut it. And all that had happened is that they had cut a little tree and opened a view so that Esther saw something she didn't usually see. With circumstantial evidence. And it really shook Esther up because she had believed it. And it was a ridiculous thing to believe. It wasn't even rational to think that those men, 2 men, could have cut down those giant trees in an afternoon and hauled it all away. It didn't even make any sense. But the circumstantial evidence made her believe it. And she believed that she had been the cause of that. And then she told everyone, I bet there's all kinds of stupid stuff I believe that isn't true, that's in the way. Beliefs that you've picked up from somebody else or from some piece of something that you just keep bringing forward, and then it blocks your ability to know what's up right now. So that's really the point that we're making. Esther's a smart girl, and she knows about stuff. How she got off on that tangent. Her desire to be a good neighbor is really strong. And her worry that she might not always be a good neighbor because she has a lot of landscaping and a lot of plants, and she's all the time trimming trees so that the people behind her on the hill can see. And she's not there very much, so she wants to fit into the neighborhood. She cares about that. But maybe she's been under the influence, you think, of some things that haven't really been under. In other words, so it was easy for her to assume the worst of herself, even though she knew her motives were pure. And how often do you feel that way about things, where you want to do what's right, but you're not really sure that you are? There are a lot of beliefs that people hold that are in your way of your absolute awareness of worthiness. You think all kinds of things about yourself that your inner being just does not think. And we think it's a good time for you to start sorting these out. We think that every time you have an unsatisfying feeling, that you might want to stop and ask yourself, what am I thinking about? And how does my inner being feel about that? Until you can show yourself who you really are. And only then will you really be living happily ever after as you've intended. Yes?
Yes. Yes. And the way you touch like that, interesting, a bunch of beliefs. And you just talked about relationship too, relationship with my body. Some of the stuff I'm called to is leadership, and I'm up on the stage, and then afterwards I'm like, what have I done? Have I put protection here? And then someone told me a belief that I'm an empath, so other people might project stuff, or I'll hold on to other people.
Well, that's the kind of thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
We've been talking about under the influence. You like the conversation? Am I under the influence of my inner being, or am I under the influence of something else? So this empath, is that what you called it? Yes. Is someone who is near someone else who's having strong thoughts and feelings, so you go along with what they are feeling rather than staying tuned to who you really are. And the reason that you might do that, or anyone might do that, is because what you can hear and see and smell and taste and touch is more evidence, more circumstantial evidence. And humans do this thing. Oh, we have not had this conversation before. Humans do this thing where you stand in a manifestation, and let's just be real, every moment is a manifestation, isn't it? Here we are in this manifestation of this room together. This is a manifestation. People, what they commonly do that does not serve them is that they stand in the manifestation and then they try to deduce what caused it. Instead of just acknowledging, like it or don't like it, think I'll move on. Instead, they want so much to explain why this moment is like it is, how they got there, who said what, who meant what, who did what. And so you just keep yourself twirled up in all of this stuff where you have no power, practicing vibrations that are not your own, until you've got momentum about thoughts that are not true, that are in the way of desires that are real. That was a nice little run of explanation, and you heard it, didn't you?
Yes, very much so. So get under the influence.
Before you take any action, just for a little while, we're asking two things of you if you want. Meditate so that you can feel what true satisfaction feels like. And then begin for a while to ask yourself frequently through the day, is this a satisfying thing I'm doing? Are these satisfying words I'm speaking? Are these satisfying thoughts that I'm thinking? And if you catch it early enough, you can change them. And you can change your patterns of thought. This is what bridging beliefs is all about. You have the ability, very simply, to bridge your beliefs into alignment with what your inner being knows about you. So, just to be clear, there's doubt, which is completely not under the influence of your inner being. There's belief that's moving more toward what you're in, and then there's knowing. Your inner being knows you because your inner being is you. Your inner being is the you without resistance. Your inner being is the essence of everything that you've asked for without resistance. That's who you are. That's who you are as non-physical. That's who you were as you made the decision to come into this physical body. All resistance you have picked up and are picking up along your physical trail. Your inner being is pure positive energy. So as you start leaning toward more and more satisfying thoughts, you're more in sync with your inner being, which means, the leverage that you have. The leverage towards success, and the standard of success that we're talking about is the success of the joyous moment in time that you are meant to be living, you see. Step 1 is contrast causes you to ask. Step 2 is source answers it. And the law of attraction gathers all the cooperative components, and maybe you'll be one of them. Step 3 is you are one of them. You're in the receiving mode so that you're receiving the impulses from your inner being. Step 4 is you're really good at that. You've been practicing it. It's funny. Step 4 is just doing really good at step 3, but that's what step 4 is. Being a master of step 3 so that you just know when you're in the receiving mode and when you're not, and you mean to be there, and so you are mostly. Step 5 is having a contrasting moment, but not being an empath to the moment. Instead, staying connected to the source energy while you're having the moment. A contrasting moment that your inner being is aware of or observing isn't the same kind of contrasting moment that you may be living. When your inner being is with you in a contrasting moment, it's a moment of choices. Like being at a buffet.